Okay, we are going to do ISDS 442. This is homework question 1. We're actually going to start over here on the read me first. So the first thing you guys have to learn is how to read his spreadsheets. Okay, so the first thing you need to know, anything that is orange, this is a hard-coded data only cell. You can put any number you want in this cell, no formulas. Okay, if it is gray with bold, that means it is a formula only cell. You may not put numbers in this cell. You may only put formulas or references to other cells. Those are okay because those are also technically a formula. Okay, do not put any hard numbers in your output cells. Do not put any formulas in your input cells. The reason is when he mechanically checks your homework, he's going to tell his system to change all of the orange numbers. And based on the numbers in your output cells, he's going to decide whether or not you did it right. Okay. Now, there's other cells, and I'll show you here in a minute, that are what are called calculation cells. And those are like extra calculations and stuff. Those don't so much matter because they're just for your calculation for kind of your back end. And those can even be like hidden if you really wanted to. But what's going to matter are your gray and bold output cells. Those are the super important ones. Now, do not change the names of the tabs. Do not add or remove tabs. Do not add or remove columns. Leave everything the way it is because his program, when he runs it, relies on the names of the tabs being the same, the order of the tabs being the same, and the orange boxes being where he expects them to be. Okay, I lost points on the first one because I added a column and I got points off for it. So do not add or remove columns. You can add column names, you can add row labels, all of that kind of stuff. And we talk about range names. We'll talk about that in a second because that does make your life a little bit easier as you start to build these more complicated formulas. But for right now, just know anything in an input cell is going to be hard-coded. Anything in a gray bold cell in black is going to be a formula, okay? So we're going to look at the first question, and you want to basically we're going to do create a calculator. We're creating a marginal tax calculator, total tax due for married couples when a taxable income value is provided, okay? And also telling you the marginal tax rate. So we're creating a calculator. These are the instructions. These are the hints, okay? I highly recommend you carefully read these gray italicized boxes because they're going to give you information. Like for here, a simple if statement will take care of the tax due for negative incomes. That's a hint. You're going to use if statements, okay? I suggest you add a calculated column with base flat tax amounts for each marginal rate. That's going to make, see, recall that you may add any number of calculated cells and labels, just no input cells with hard-coded data. So you can add all of the stuff you want. You can see here I've added already that we're going to have a base tax column. You can add these, just don't put any hard numbers in them, even if they're just label numbers. For example, if you want to add column numbers here so that these are labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for whatever reason, those are still hard-coded numbers. So you don't want to do that because you're going to get points off, okay? Do not add any hard-coded numbers except what's in these orange cells. And do not put formulas in your orange cells because if you rely on those formulas, it'll break your spreadsheet when he tests it, okay? So the first thing we need to know, and you can see here we're using the 2020 income. The first thing we need to do is go to this page, okay? And so the California income tax bracket tables are right here. They're really easy. Now, he's told you we want the married couples. So you're going to use this one on this side, okay? And this is the 2019 tax bracket. Do they have 2020? He told you he wanted 2020, but the thing that the tax table he gave you is for 2019. So It's probably the same. See, this has a 2022 calculator. I don't think the tax table has changed. But this is just what it gives you. Use the information where he gave it to you, because it won't matter, because those can always be changed. Now, I will tell you a hint is down here. He gives you a picture of using the California tax calculator. This is what, if you do this correctly, the number that you should get for the correct amount of tax for $250,000 married filing jointly. Okay, so that's what we're trying to do here. Okay, so the first thing we need to do, and I'm just going to do this simply, but you just copy this information from this tax bracket into your spreadsheet over here. You can do it manually. I don't think you can copy and paste because of these plus signs. So I'm just going to copy it from my other page because I don't feel like typing it. But just so you know, that's all you need to do. Okay, so now you have your numbers, you have your marginal rates, and for up here, we can put our $250,000. One of the other numbers that we need right here is the standard deduction. If we go back to this page and we just scroll down, right here shows you standard deductions, California personal exemptions. We're only doing the standard deduction, it's right here. So it's 8472. So we're just going to stick that in here, 8472. We've now got all of our hard-coded data. That's all the hard coding we need. Everything else is going to be a formula. Okay, I'm going to make this a little wider just because. And then also these ones, I'm going to make numbers just because I can. Okay, also one of the things I told you about calculation cells, if you go up here to styles and I hit this thing down, he uses this stuff all the time. Notice he does his explanatory text. See how it's like? He uses explanatory text. You can have check cells. You know, these ones, if you watch the videos and stuff, he will use calculation for these, which are very similar to output cells, except they're orange instead of black. So they're very, very helpful. Now, so we want to add a calculated column to figure out the base tax and flat amounts. Obviously, the base tax for this one's going to be 0. For this one, the base tax is going to be, because this is the marginal rate. So if you read this correctly, what it's basically saying is that every dollar over $17,618 is going to be taxed at 2%. Every dollar $17,618 and under was taxed at 1% when you get here. So what this is going to do is that this base tax equals this number times that number. Okay, now can we just pull this down? Well, yeah, but then the problem is this is too much, because now you're taxing every dollar under 41,766 at 2%, but we already just established that every dollar under 17,618 was only taxed at 1%. So we need to build out the base tax. So it's basically every dollar up to here is going to get taxed at 1%. Every dollar between these two is going to get taxed at 2%, and your base tax, and then you're going to add on this. So you're basically going to equal this number plus this number minus this number times that number. Okay, so what you're saying is I'm adding up my previous base tax. So we've already figured out what, because we maxed it out. So every dollar up to 17 is accounted for, and then the remaining dollars are going to go to 2. All right, and that is your base tax up until you hit 65, and then it's going to go up. So this one you can actually just pull down. So if we look at this, we're adding our base tax, and then every dollar between 41 and 65 is then taxed at 4%. And then we go here, we're adding every dollar under 65 was taxed at its appropriate rate, and then every dollar between 65 and 91 is now taxed at 6. And that's how marginal tax rates work. Okay, so now we've built out our base tax table. The next thing we're going to do here is I'm going to show you, he talks about it It makes your life so much easier if you label the stuff that you're using. And to do that, for example, if I go here, this is C10. C10 is really important. If I go up here, I can name this my taxable income. Okay. So now I can keep it straight when I'm doing formulas and I want to refer to C10, which is my taxable income. I can just start typing in taxable income and it'll come up. It does make your life easier to label things. And I believe that if you want to see what you've labeled, you can go to formulas and you go to your name manager and it'll tell you everything that you've labeled. And so if you want to change the name, if you want to delete it, whatever you want to do, you can do that. Also, if you create the name in the name manager, you can limit it to just the one worksheet. However, if you create it the way I just showed you, it'll actually make it through the whole workbook. So when we're working on these other problems, you're going to see taxable income come up as an option, even though it's not relevant to that sheet. Okay, so just so you know, so you can do it in name manager, and I can probably edit this. Yeah, I can't edit this afterwards to make it just worksheet. I have to, when I created it, make it either worksheet or workbook. Okay, so I'm gonna close that out. The next thing that I want to define is this one, and this is my range of incomes. So I'm gonna make this income. Okay, these are my base taxes. I want to make these ones base tax. Okay. And then let me just see if there's anything else I want to, that I'm going to need. The last one that I'm going to need is my income rate, which is going to be actually an array. So I'm going to take this and all of these orange ones. Now, I will tell you this, I screwed this up when I took this class. Do not include the labels. Don't include the labels. When you're naming these things, only include the numbers, okay? It will mess you up if you include the labels. Don't do it. This one is going to be my income rate, and that's an array. And that way, when I'm doing these formulas, I can just refer to these different areas that I want instead of having to select them or having to change different things about them. This is really, really helpful later on for just keeping all of your stuff straight. Okay, it really, really helps if you name the areas that you're going to be working with, because it just simplifies everything. And it also makes it easier for you to check and make sure that you have identified the formula correctly, because you can tell right off. You know, you can't accidentally do the B column if you've defined income rate as the C and D column, you know, so it's going to save you from little tiny errors that might mess you up. Excuse me. So just take a few seconds and take the time to do that in your, especially in your homework. When you do your tests, he will have already done that for you. You'll find that he already has those different ranges defined. So if you get used to working with them, it is going to help you on the tests. Okay. So now we need to figure out the taxable income. Now it reminds you here, you have to correctly determine the marginal rate, and you have to correctly determine the tax. And he recommends a simple if statement will take care of tax due for negative incomes. Okay. Now, taxable income is simply your income minus your standard deduction. So we can simply do that. We can do income. Actually, did we? Hold on. We have taxable income. This one can just be income if we want to, but this is going to be pretty simple. So I can just do, oops, here, equals the income minus the standard deduction. Okay. Or if I named this income, oh, I already named this income, didn't I? Hold on. Name manager. Yeah, I already named this one income. So let's close this. So we'll just leave that. It's fine. So we have our taxable income, okay? Now, sometimes your taxable income might be zero. Well, we don't want that. That's not going to help. I don't want my taxable income to be zero. So we can use an if statement. So we can use it either here at taxable income, we can use it here at tax due. I like doing it at taxable income. So what we're going to do is if C8 minus C9 is less than 0, return 0. Otherwise, return C8 minus C9. Okay, so basically, if, let's do, well, that's fine. So if C8 is less than or 0, return 0. If it actually is 0, it'll also return 0. Otherwise, just tell me whatever it is, okay? So now you can see it's returned 0. So I can put this back up to 250,000. That's my taxable income. Now, in order to figure out my marginal rate, I need to compare my taxable income to this chart, this array right here. Because I'm comparing it to an array, I want to use VLOOKUP, okay? VLOOKUP is the best thing to use for looking up the taxable income rate, okay? So that means I want to VLOOKUP, see, it looks for a value in the leftmost column and returns the value from the same column you specify. So it's going to check this column, and then I can tell it to return the value in that column. Or I could also tell it, if I selected this entire array, to return the value in the base tax column. You know, there are, and he says there are different ways to do this. I'm going to show you a way to do it with index and match. You could technically do it with VLOOKUP, but I will tell you that I did not get full credit when I used VLOOKUP, so I would recommend doing it this way that I'm going to show you. Okay, so we're going to do VLOOKUP, and we want to look up the taxable income, which is that number. So that's the number we want to look up is taxable income, and we want to look it up in the income table. Okay, so now it's highlighted. You can see our we're going to look up this number. We're going to look it up in this column. Oh, I'm sorry, hold on. We actually want to look it up in income rate because we want to look it up in the whole array. Okay, see how it's now the whole array? So we're going to look up my taxable income in this array. And I want it to return the number in column 2, which is this column. Okay, then I'm going to close it. There we go. That's my marginal rate. And you can see that 241,000 is in between 115 and 590. Therefore, the marginal tax rate is 9.3%. Okay, that's what we want, exactly what we wanted. However, again, if we bring this back down, well, now it's giving me a marginal rate of 1%, which is incorrect because if I have no taxable income, I have no marginal rate. So marginal rate needs to return 0. So this is, again, we're going to use an if statement. I highly recommend when you're building your formulas, have it do what you want it to do, and then build out if statements for other eventualities. It just makes it a little bit easier. So I want to add an if statement here. So if what I just did, the VLOOKUP, actually, no, I'm going to leave that alone. I want to say if taxable income is less than or equal to 0, then I want you to return 0. Otherwise, I want you to do the VLOOKUP. Okay. So that's what I've just told it to do. So if this number is less than or equal to 0, then just return 0 for the marginal tax rate. Otherwise, do the VLOOKUP. See? And now my marginal rate is 0, as it should be. We're going to put this back to 250,000. And we can see that because we've just added to a formula that already works, our formula still works. Now we got to figure out the tax due. So the tax due, this is going to essentially be MX plus B. Okay. So this is X and this is B. So this is our intercept. This is basically where we're starting. So what we want to do is we want to start at base tax plus the marginal tax rate times the dollars in between what we're doing. But we can't just like select those cells, because if the number changes, then which cells it are also going to change. So we need Excel to do all the work for us and look up what it's supposed to be. Okay, so that means, so let's just build this out. So the first thing that we're going to want it to do, hold on real quick so I can look at it. The first thing we're going to want it to do is to add the base tax. So we want it to look up which base tax from here is going to be applicable. For that, we could use VLOOKUP, but the problem is that we're not like I said, VLOOKUP didn't 100% work for me when I did it that way. So we're going to use index and match, because what index will do is it will look for the intersection between the row and column that you want. Okay, so whereas VLOOKUP needs to have an array, index will look it up without an array. You just have to tell it where to go. All right, so we're going to index. So it returns a value at the intersection of a particular row and column in a given range. So we want to index, we want to find base tax. Okay, so base tax is here, and we already defined it. So we're going to index base tax. And now we want to tell it which row number, but we don't know which row number because the row number is based on the taxable income. So we're going to basically have to look up the taxable income. So that's where match comes in. So we're going to match the lookup value, which is again taxable income, and we're going to look it up in the income column, which is this one. Okay. And here's where match becomes really important. We want it to find the number that's less than. Okay. That's why this is so important here, because what we want is to find the base tax for the row that is less than the taxable income. So right here, the base tax for the amount of money in between 115,000 and 590 is this row, which is this number is less than our taxable income. So then we're going to add this amount of base tax, and then the remainder is going to be taxed at this marginal tax rate. Okay, so that's why it's important that we want to use less than. So we're going to hit 1. So let's now hit enter and check and make sure we did this correctly. I think I'm fine, but you apparently want another. Okay, see, I didn't close the parentheses, so it just wants another parentheses. Fine. So this is correct. This is giving me the correct base tax rate that I want. Okay, now I want to add to that the amount of tax, the marginal amount of tax, really, which means the difference between 590 and 115 multiplied by 9.3%. So what I want is to add, I have to subtract basically 115,648 from my taxable income, because that's already been accounted for in my base tax. So what I want to do is every dollar over 115, I want to multiply by 9.3. Okay, so first I have to tell it to do that. So I want to add my taxable income here minus, now I want it to find for me how much to subtract, which is basically going to be almost this same thing again. Okay, so I want it to find for me index. This time I want it to look in just this column. So I want to look in income. Okay, so it's going to find for me in the income column, and I want it to match the number that's one less than my taxable income, which is what we just did right here. So we're going to use the exact same match formula. Okay, so we're going to match taxable income find it in the income column, and we're going to do less than. Okay, so that's what we're looking for here. All right, so we've now told it to give us our base rate plus the additional amount that we just told it. And I always sit here and I look at the colors of the parentheses to make sure that I did them correctly. So, but now we need to multiply this whole bit here by the marginal tax rate. So I'm going to add one more parentheses. You can see how it's changed color. So we have green and then purple and then red and then black. And we're outside the red, but inside the black. And we're going to multiply it by this marginal tax rate that we already told it to look up. Okay. And we hit enter. And you can see 16,798.66, which is what we were supposed to get, 16,798.66. Okay. So now this is working perfectly. Okay. What happens if our tax rate is 0? We can go here, go to 5,000, and the tax due is going to be 0 because we put the if statement in the taxable income and because we fixed the marginal interest rate. So that's 0 times 0 gets 0. Okay. Now you could, if you wanted to, also put an if statement here, and it's going to be very similar to this one. And it's just going to be basically if taxable income is 0, then 0, otherwise go through this whole thing. Okay. And this is what I mean about building out the formula and kind of checking it every step along the way to make sure that it's doing it correctly. Okay. So we're going to sit here and we're going to build that if statement. So we're going to say if our taxable income is less than or equal to 0, then give us 0. Otherwise, perform our calculation. And then see, this is red and this one is black. So I'm going to add one more to close that out. Okay, enter. Okay, so this is our completed sheet. All right, so we go back to 250,000. It gives us a taxable income. It gives us the correct marginal tax rate. It gives us the correct tax due. What if I, let's just add another 0. Now, our marginal tax rate up here is 13.3%. And the tax due is only $290 because it's $116,000 plus every dollar over 181 times 13.3%. Okay. Now, the last thing I'm going to show you before I close this out is the best thing to do here when you're studying for your tests and stuff. You just hit Control tilde and it shows you your formulas. Okay, and you can bring these out and here's your formulas. And when you do that, you can print this whole formula. And then when you're taking your test, you can just copy it. And if you've labeled things correctly, then you'll be able to do this. Now, one thing I will tell you is that it will help you out so much if you're going to do that to click on this one so that it highlights things in colors and then print this out in color so that you know what everything is actually labeled. And so it's up to you how you want to do it. If you choose not to label things, then you'll have the cell ranges, but then you have to make sure that you print, you know, the column and row labels so that you can find which cells you're referring to. But definitely when you print these out, leave yourself notes so that you know where your formula is pointed to so that you can make sure on the test you point to the correct columns. Okay, so we're just gonna Control tilde, close that up again. And I hope this helps. I'll be doing another video for the other ones. This one is probably a little bit longer just because I wanted to explain how things worked. But good luck, and I hope this helps.